This is Ask an Expat with Marcus and Matt from an Expat's Russia, where we answer your questions about what it's like to live, work, and travel in Russia.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode. Today we're going to discuss how to avoid mail order bride scams in Russia. Marcus, what would your first piece of advice be for someone looking to go to Russia to find a wife?
I would say avoid at all costs matchmaking services or matchmaking agencies. And the number two reasons why is because one, they're expensive, and two, you don't know what the quality of services are, and
right.
Also, you don't necessarily, if you're going through a service, you don't necessarily know what the intentions of the woman or the women you meet are, right? So you don't know,
well,
are they really looking for what you're looking for, or are they, kind of looking for somebody with a Western passport?
Right, exactly. Well, I think one of the biggest things, you hear all these stories. There's this TV show that I think is quite popular in the US these days. I don't watch it, but I've heard about it, 90 Day Fiancé, where they have, the guys who are looking for wives in Ukraine and in Russia and bringing them back to the US. You just hear all these crazy stories of some guy spending $10,000 on text messages or emails to some girl on some matchmaking website. Then you hear these stories that, it's actually some Russian guy on the other end who's answering the emails, and, this guy paid $10,000 to talk to some Russian girl who doesn't even exist. And it's like, it's so easy to just get on a plane in 2000, well, okay, in COVID times, it's slightly more difficult to get to Russia, right? But in general, it's easy to just get on a plane and go to another country and learn about the culture, learn about the people, and meet people in a normal sort of social setting. I think this is one of the things that always struck me with these guys who are doing this, is that they're not some, guys who live in their mother's basement. A lot of times they're kind of outgoing and, well-to-do American guys who are divorced or have some issue with women in America. I don't really know all of their motivations. But if they were just to show up in Russia, I mean, how good could you live and how long could you live in Russia on $10,000 instead of spending that on emails to some girl who may or may not exist?
Right. I think the main advantage to going through an agency, or at least in most people's eyes, is to fast track the process of meeting, several women, having several candidates, and kind of, getting there. They don't necessarily have the desire to live in Russia, right? But if you're going to drop several $1,000s and you're hoping to get a wife, a long-term lasting relationship with someone from one of those countries, you probably should know something about the culture, maybe even pick up some phrases and words in that language. So it's in the process of actually doing it yourself. I don't mean like just blindly doing it yourself, going to Russia with having done some research by yourself, but in that process you can start meeting people, and whether it's online, offline. And one thing that we discussed in a different video actually is Russian women like a man who can take initiative, and she can depend on. So
again, we're kind of not speaking from experience here. Neither of us used one of these matchmaking agencies. I've met a number of people in Russia who, I can't say for certain that they use these agencies, but it seemed very much to be the case. And I never quite understood why it just goes against all. I just wouldn't want to base a relationship with someone on some agency, right? So like, you have an agency, their job is to just like find random women and then put them in contact with you. That's just kind of strange. And you have all of the cultural differences, you touched on. What happens when that person comes back to your country and they're stuck in, a small town in the middle of the US and can't really speak English that well? That's not going to go over well, and it's going to be a big stress for you. You'd be much better off long-term going to Russia, learning about the culture, meeting people in a natural setting, if you were really dead set on meeting and having a Russian wife.
Right. I think, with an agency, okay, so with Let's Russia, we get calls in sometimes from people who need a visa to Russia, right? And, talking to clients, they'll tell you why they're going to Russia. And they say, well, I met a woman or I met a girl, I'm going to visit. And it turns out that, more than once I've talked to people who are talking to Russian women they've never met. And there's some type of scam going on, and they say, well, she's
Right.
asking for money, and she's telling me that she needs to get a visa to the US and it costs this much, and I know it doesn't cost that much, for example. So I tell them, I'm like, you're not sending money, right? So the kind of it's kind of, they don't want to be in that situation, but going through an agency might not be the best idea either. So how do you kind of find the middle ground where you're not scammed by individual women, you're not scammed by an agency, for example? And I would say, if you're dead set on it, then you have to spend some time in the country. And believe me, I really genuinely believe that there are lots of very good Russian women that you can, be happy with and build a strong relationship with. But you have to kind of go there and meet them in a normal way.
Right. Well, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I always give to friends who are, I have friends who've married people from all over the world. And I always say to them, like, look, if you're going to marry someone from another country, you should be ready at any moment that you might have to go and live in that country. And to go and live in that country means you should understand kind of the basic, culture and how people think about things. I mean, the outlook on life is very different in Russia than it is in the United States. We're very much similar too, but I think people overlook these facts, right? And then they think about, oh, I just want to find some beautiful Russian woman and bring her over to the US,
Right.
and everything's going to be great. These are the people that are going to get in the most trouble. I mean, you have
Right.
nothing, there's very high risk associated with a decision like that. For me, it just sounds crazy, honestly. Why would someone even consider going through one of these marriage agencies? Also, I mean, the women who are at these agencies, right? Most of them are probably volunteering to be, match made with American or German or, foreign guys. So, what does that say about the quality of the women, or maybe not the quality, what does that say about the intentions?
Well, some of them are paid just to act like they're interested.
Interested, yeah,
Right?
sure.
So I don't think some people realize that. But how do you know what the intentions are of the women? What their relationship is with the agency as well. Another thing I was going to say is that I've known a few people who have married to go to the US, for example, and then divorced. Right? They wait out their time, they get their green card, they get their passport,
Sure.
and then divorce. That's never a good thing to happen, but you can avoid some of those things by, and also we've had people getting visas to go to Russia because usually it's the Russian wife was deported from the US for up to 3 years, 5 years, because they broke a minor rule in when they got their visa. They got a tourist visa, then they got married and left the US on a honeymoon, or they overstayed their visa, they're married to an American, and then these Americans have to go to Russia with their wives for 3 years minimum. And like you just said, you have to be willing to potentially go to your wife's native country. So that's a good rule of thumb, I think.
Yeah, I mean, again, our overarching statement here would be to avoid all of the matchmaking agencies. There's so much information on the web these days that you can find to figure things out. I know you might be worried about language barriers and whatnot, but to be honest, if you're worried about a language barrier, that's a pretty big red flag in my mind. Like, if you can't communicate with someone who you're considering to potentially be a wife, that's insanity, right? I mean, you have to be realistic here. If you're going to Russia and the people that you're meeting are not speaking English and you're having to use a translator, how do you even know if they're translating exactly what's being said? I mean, I cannot even fathom what that situation is like.
Right, right.
So,
Well,
again,
that's what we wanted to kind of share our experience, and although we don't have a direct negative experience with a matchmaking agency, we know several people who have been through that, and some of it has ended in divorce.
happiness.
So others happiness, but in general, those are kind of the things you want to avoid. So
Right. If you have any experience with these matchmaking agencies in Russia, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well. See you in the next video.